Elian Vance hadn't planned on anyone seeing him shirtless on the beach, but the woman with the messy bun, oversized sunglasses, and a Doberman named Pickle clearly didn't get the memo. "You're in my chair," she said, arms crossed, standing over him like she owned the Atlantic Ocean. Elian looked up from the lounge chair he'd dragged out onto the sand in front of his rented beach house. "I'm sorry, you're what?" She pointed to the small tag on the armrest, RZ in faded black marker. "Rachel Zeller, that's me." "You dragged it from my porch." He sat up slowly, the sun warming his bare chest. "Look, I didn't see any names, I thought it came with the house." Rachel didn't smile. "It didn't, that one's mine, I've had it since college." Pickle growled as if to confirm her claim. Elian stood holding up his hands. All right, you can have your throne back." She dragged the chair away without another word, her dog trotting proudly beside her. Elian stared after her, amused despite himself, so this was the neighbor. He hadn't expected much from this last-minute rental, just some peace and quiet, away from the city, the investors, the endless meetings. 1 month off, no one knowing where he was. No suits, no ties, no reminders that he was Elian Vance, co-founder of a tech company worth hundreds of millions. But apparently tranquility came with attitude, and a Doberman named Pickle. The next morning, Elian spotted her again. She was watering sunflowers on her porch, wearing paint-stained sweats and humming off-key. He watched from his balcony, sipping coffee, the ocean breeze pulling at his white t-shirt. Pickle noticed him first, barking at the sight of Elian's bare feet. Rachel looked up. "You again." "Me again," Elian replied. "This time I brought my own chair." She cracked a smile at that barely. Progress? Over the next few days, their paths crossed constantly. Rachel with her loud laugh and sarcastic remarks. Rachel yelling at seagulls. Rachel reading on the porch, barefoot with a glass of white wine, always alone, always stubbornly uninterested in small talk. But Elian couldn't stop noticing her. One windy afternoon, he helped her chase down a beach umbrella that had launched itself across the sand like a missile. She cursed like a sailor, and he laughed so hard he nearly tripped over a dune. "Why are you even here?" she asked, brushing sand out of her ponytail. "Vacation," he said simply. "Needed a break." She eyed him suspiciously. "You don't seem like the type who knows how to take one." "I'm trying," he said, then added, "You live here, born and raised." "Left for a while, came back when my dad got sick. He passed 2 years ago, I stayed." He didn't ask why, he just nodded. That night after dinner alone, Elian stepped onto his deck and looked toward her porch. She was out there, legs tucked under her, sketchbook in her lap. He raised a hand. She hesitated, then lifted hers back. The next morning, there was a mug of coffee waiting for him on his porch. Black, no sugar, just how he liked it. He picked it up, looked toward her house. She didn't come out. Later that week, the power went out during a summer storm. Elian lit candles and made pasta with what was left in the fridge. Just as he sat down, there was a knock at the sliding door. Rachel stood there, soaked, holding a bottle of wine and 2 mismatched wine glasses. "Your place has lights," she said. "Mine doesn't." "I hate eating in the dark," he stepped aside. "Then come in." They ate by candlelight, sitting on bar stools, the storm raging outside. "You never said what you do," she said between bites. Elian hesitated. "I work in tech," she snorted. "That's vague. I prefer it that way. You some kind of coder." "I used to be." "You rich?" He choked on his wine. Rachel grinned. "That's a yes." He set the glass down. "Why do you ask?" "Because you dress like someone who's pretending not to have money." "Which usually means they have a lot of it," he smiled. "Guilty." She looked at him for a long time, her expression unreadable. "You don't act like it." "Thanks," he said, surprised at how much that meant. She shrugged. "I hate rich guys, but you're tolerable." Elian laughed. "I'll take that as high praise." The storm passed, but Rachel didn't leave. They talked until 1 in the morning about everything and nothing, her art, his company, the people they used to be. He never told her exactly how rich he was, but she didn't press, she didn't care. And that was the problem, because Elian was starting to care too much. He found himself looking for her, listening for Pickle's bark, watching for her to walk by with a sketch pad under her arm and sand on her legs. He started cooking more just in case she showed up. She usually did. "You're becoming predictable," she told him over grilled salmon one night. "You keep showing up," he shot back. "I like your cooking." "I like your face," she blinked. "That's direct." "I'm a direct guy." Rachel looked away, smiling into her wine glass. "You're dangerous." Elian leaned closer. "Only if you're scared." "I'm not." "Then prove it." She didn't kiss him, not that night, but she didn't pull away when he brushed her hair behind her ear. The next day, he walked her to the end of the beach. They sat on the rocks, watching the tide roll in. It was quiet, peaceful, close. "You're leaving in 2 weeks," she said suddenly. "I don't have to." She turned to him, startled. "What?" "I don't have to leave." "Not if I have a reason to stay." She looked at him, really looked at him, like she was trying to see past the man with the easy charm and rented beach house. "Maybe she did. Don't say that," she whispered. "Not unless you mean it." "I mean it." He reached for her hand. This time she didn't pull away. Rachel didn't open her door the next morning. Elian stood on his porch, coffee cooling in his hand, eyes flicking across the sand to her shuttered windows. No porch light, no pickle barking, no Rachel humming off key while watering sunflowers, just silence. It didn't feel right. By afternoon, he gave up pretending not to worry and walked over. He knocked once. Pickle barked from inside, followed by a muffled, "It's open." He stepped in. The living room was dim, a single fan stirring the muggy air. Rachel sat on the couch, her ankle wrapped in a dish towel, a sketchbook abandoned beside her. "I fell down the back steps," she said before he could ask. "Missed the last 2 and twisted it. Not broken, just dumb." "Have you had it looked at?" She waved him off. "I'm fine, I iced it." "I don't need a babysitter." "Good," he said, kneeling to inspect the wrap. "Because I'm not a babysitter. I'm your very nosy neighbor who's going to make sure you don't get gangrene." She rolled her eyes but didn't stop him. He unwrapped the towel gently. Her ankle was already swelling, red and angry. "You need compression and elevation and probably someone to walk Pickle." She looked away. "He's already mad at me. He hasn't had a proper run all day. I'll take him." Rachel blinked. "You?" "He barely listens to me. I've seen worse than an opinionated dog." "You sure?" He was already looping the leash through his fingers. "I used to work 3 jobs at once. Walked dogs in the morning, slung espresso in the afternoon, coded until dawn. I can handle yours." Rachel raised an eyebrow. "You're full of surprises," he grinned. "I haven't even started." Pickle didn't maul him. That was a good start. They returned 40 minutes later, both damp from the sea spray, and Rachel was asleep on the couch, a pillow under her swollen ankle. Her sketchbook had fallen open on the floor. Elian picked it up, meaning to close it quietly, but what he saw stopped him. It was him. Or at least her version of him. A profile sketched in soft graphite, his jawline, the curve of his neck, his shoulders bare, eyes looking out into nothing. He closed it quickly and set it back down. When Rachel stirred, he was already in the kitchen, heating soup. "I saw the drawing," he said, without looking at her. She didn't pretend she didn't know which one. "I wasn't going to show you." "Why not?" "Because it's easier to sketch someone when you don't owe them an explanation." He turned, leaning against the counter. "You don't owe me anything." She shrugged, resting her head back. "I like the way you sit still when you think. Most people fidget." "You don't." He handed her a bowl without a word. She took it, their fingers brushing. Later, as the sun dipped and gold light flooded the room, Rachel seemed to study him without trying to hide it. "You didn't come here just for a vacation." He didn't answer immediately. "No, trouble back home." "Not trouble, just noise." She didn't push. "Well, this place has plenty of quiet." He stared at her, the glow catching in her hair. "It has you." That night, he returned to his house and couldn't stop pacing. He opened his laptop, ignoring the emails piling up like vultures. He read none of them. Instead, his eyes kept drifting to the sketch she'd made. It wasn't flattering. It wasn't romanticized. It was honest, and that terrified him more than any hostile takeover ever had. The next few days blurred into each other. He brought her groceries, took Pickle for runs, and fixed the broken step she'd tripped on. She let him. No argument, no sarcasm, just quiet nods and the occasional soft thanks. She painted again, sitting on a stool with her leg propped up. She didn't ask him to pose, he didn't need to. One late morning, she called out to him as he walked by. "You ever think about disappearing permanently?" she asked from the porch. He stopped. "All the time. And I never had a reason worth staying disappeared for." She looked at him, her gaze unreadable. "What if you find one?" He stepped closer. "Then I stop running." Rachel didn't reply, but she didn't look away either. A few days later, her limp was gone. She met him at the edge of the water, barefoot, jeans rolled to her knees. Pickle ran wild behind her, chasing gulls with reckless glee. "Guess you won't have to walk him anymore," she said. "I'll miss him," Elian said, eyes on her. She laughed softly, then said, "I have a gallery showing next weekend, the first one since my dad." She didn't finish, she didn't need to. "You want me to come?" he asked. She hesitated. "I don't know if I want anyone to." "Then why are you telling me?" Rachel bent down, picking up a shell. "Because part of me does." He took the shell from her hand, their fingers brushing again. "Then I'll be there if you want me." She turned, the wind catching her hair. "I think I do." For the first time in years, Elian didn't think about his bank account or the boardroom or the IPO that had made him a millionaire before 30. He thought about sea salt and pencil strokes and the look she gave him when she thought he wasn't watching. He thought about how something could matter before it made sense, and how, once it did, it was already too late to pretend it didn't. The gallery was in a converted cannery near the harbor, all exposed beams and salt-worn brick, strung with soft lights that flickered like fireflies. Rachel hadn't looked at him once since he arrived. Elian stood quietly in the back, sipping something dry and expensive, watching her float between guests like she'd been doing this her whole life. Her hair was pinned up, a loose strand falling against her neck. She wore a navy dress that didn't try too hard. It didn't have to, he hadn't told her he was coming. But she saw him. She didn't smile. She just tilted her head ever so slightly before turning back to an older couple asking about the piece behind her, a watercolor of her porch. Bare feet on the steps. A dog curled at the bottom, no faces, just light and angles and silence. He moved slowly through the room, taking in the work that felt like her without ever saying her name. There was one of the shoreline, captured in storm light. One of her rusted mailbox with a sunflower blooming beside it. And then toward the back wall was the sketch, the one of him. It hung unframed, raw and slightly off-center. A choice, he realized. She hadn't softened the lines. Hadn't shaded out the tired in his eyes or the tension in his jaw. A woman next to him leaned closer to read the title card. "Disarmed." She turned to Elian. "Interesting name, I like how unfinished it feels." "Me too," he said. Rachel appeared beside him a moment later, her voice low. "I wasn't sure you'd come. I told you I would. People say a lot of things. I don't." She studied him, her expression unreadable. "You hate being looked at." "I don't mind when it's you." She didn't respond right away. Instead, she turned toward the sketch. "I didn't plan to include it. But something felt wrong when I left it out." "Because it's honest," he said. "That's terrifying." He glanced at her. "Good things usually are." The gallery buzzed around them, but they were still. Rachel shifted her weight, eyes fixed on the pencil lines. "I'm leaving next week, New Hampshire." "A residency program for 3 months." He blinked. "You hadn't mentioned that." "I didn't think I'd need to," he breathed in slowly. "You already accepted," she nodded. "It's a big deal." "I didn't think I'd get in." "And now that you have, I don't know. Do you want to go?" "I want to." That stopped him. Before he could speak again, a man in a linen blazer called her name from across the room. She touched Elian's arm gently. "Stay." "I'll be back." He watched her walk away, his pulse pounding. The idea of her leaving shouldn't have hit so hard. It had only been a few weeks. But somehow she'd gotten under his skin in a way no one ever had. When she returned an hour later, the gallery had thinned. She looked tired but calm, like a storm had passed and left everything just slightly rearranged. "Walk with me?" she asked. They stepped into the cool night, the streetlights casting gold across the wet pavement. She didn't speak at first. Neither did he. I applied before I met you, she said eventually. I figured. I didn't expect you to matter, he looked at her then. You didn't expect to matter to me either. She stopped walking. Do I? Yes, her breath caught. I told myself I wouldn't let anyone anchor me here. I'm not trying to keep you from anything. But if I stay, it'll be because of you. He took a step closer. And if you go, it won't change how I feel. She hesitated. Elian, I've built everything in my life by knowing when to bet on the long shot. You're the one thing I don't want to regret not fighting for. Her hands were cold when he took them in his. She didn't pull away. I don't know how to do this, she said softly. I don't either. But I want to try. She looked up at him, the street lamps catching in her eyes. I haven't let anyone matter in a long time. He leaned down, voice low. Then let me be the first. She kissed him, not out of hesitation, but to say she already had. They didn't talk about New Hampshire after that, not that night. They sat on a bench facing the water, her head resting against his chest, the tide whispering at the edge of the dock. When he walked her home, she paused in front of her door. I'm scared, she said quietly. Me too, he replied. But he kissed her again anyway. And this time, she didn't look away. 3 days before Rachel was scheduled to leave for New Hampshire, Elian stood at the edge of the dock, hands in his pockets, watching the water churn beneath the tide. The wind was sharper now, the season shifting. He'd been quiet since the gallery night, not because his feelings had dulled, but because they'd grown teeth. He wasn't used to wanting something he couldn't control. Behind him, footsteps crunched over gravel. I had a dream last night, Rachel said, her voice low as she approached. I was boarding a train. You were standing on the platform, but you didn't say anything. You just watched me leave. He turned slowly. Did I look angry? No, she wrapped her arms around herself. You looked like someone who had already decided to forget me. I couldn't, he said. Even if I wanted to. Rachel pulled a folded sheet of paper from her jacket. This came this morning. They want to push my start date. The studio space won't be ready for another 2 weeks. He stared at the paper in her hand. So you're staying longer? I could. What's stopping you? She didn't answer right away. I don't want to waste time pretending I'm not already tangled in this. He stepped closer. Then don't. I've never built anything with someone. I don't know how to let my life fit around another person's. You don't have to fit around me. You let me in, Rachel. That's the only part that matters. She looked down. It's terrifying how much I believe you. He took her hand gently. Then let's be terrified together. That night, they didn't return to either house. They walked the beach until the moon was high, their footprints trailing behind them like a path only they could read. When they finally reached the edge of the dunes, Elian paused. I want to show you something, he said. Rachel followed him to the rental. He led her upstairs to the master bedroom where a large canvas leaned against the far wall, half covered by a sheet. I painted this, she asked, teasing. No, he said. I did, she blinked. You paint, not well. But I tried. He pulled the sheet aside. The canvas was rough, uneven, a field of blue and gold with a single chair facing the sea, her chair. Rachel stared at it. You remembered the tag. I see it every day. She stepped closer, fingertips brushing the edges. Why? Because it's yours. And now, so is everything I want next. She turned to him slowly. You're not going back to the city, are you? I told my team I'm extending my leave, indefinitely. Rachel didn't speak for a long moment. Then she asked, do you regret it? Not for a second. He watched her eyes trace the brushstrokes again. You're not the man I thought dragged that chair off my porch. I hope not. You're quieter than I expected. But you see everything. I saw you. She stepped into him then, resting her head against his shoulder. I never imagined someone would show up in my life and make me want to stay still. He kissed the top of her head. You don't have to stay still. You just don't have to run alone. In the days that followed, Rachel didn't pack. She sent an email to the residency organizers letting them know she'd defer. She didn't explain why. She didn't need to. Elian brought her to a small property just inland, tucked between 2 hills where wildflowers grew in reckless patches. It had a wide porch and a crooked fence and a faded red door. I bought it, he said, her brows lifted. You bought a house. I bought our future, she laughed, but her voice cracked at the edges. You're insane. I am, he agreed. About you. She stepped inside before he could say more. The place was empty, the air filled with dust and sun. She stood in the middle of the living room, spinning once. You didn't even ask me. I didn't have to. She turned, and in her eyes was something fierce and certain. Then build it with me. I will. They spent the next few weeks giving the house a heartbeat. She painted the walls in shades she mixed herself, refusing anything from a swatch. He built her a studio in the back, with windows that opened wide to the trees. Every evening they walked the beach with Pickle, who had since decided Elian was tolerable enough to share the bed. One morning she found a box on the porch. Inside was a single key on a gold chain and a note in Elian's handwriting. No matter where you go, this will always be home. She slipped it around her neck and wore it every day after. They didn't rush into weddings or rings or declarations shouted in front of crowds. They didn't need to. Their love built itself in the spaces between paintbrushes and coffee mugs, in the way he always made sure there was bread in the pantry and the way she always left the porch light on if he was out late at the shore. Months passed, then seasons. The world outside changed, but they didn't. One autumn evening, as golden leaves danced in the wind and the porch creaked beneath their feet, Elian leaned over and kissed her neck. You still steal my breath, he murmured. Rachel smiled against his shoulder. You stole my heart first, and this time neither of them let go. The first snow came early that year. Rachel stood at the edge of the field behind their house, her boots buried ankle-deep in powder, a canvas clutched under her arm. The studio lights behind her glowed faintly through the fogged windows, but she wasn't ready to go back inside yet. The world had gone still in that peculiar way winter always brings, like time had stopped and waited for her to catch her breath. Elian approached from behind, his coat unzipped, hair damp from the snowflakes melting into it. He didn't speak, just wrapped his arms around her from behind and rested his chin on her shoulder. You're freezing, she murmured. You always say that, and you never move. I like the way you hold still, she said. He kissed the side of her neck, slow and warm, and she leaned back into him without hesitation. I saw what you were working on, he said after a beat. You weren't supposed to, I know, but you left the door open. It's not finished. It's beautiful. Rachel turned to look at him. It's different from anything I've done. It feels like a beginning. He brushed a snowflake from her eyebrow. Then maybe it's time to show the world something new, she hesitated. I've been offered a collection deal, his brows lifted. That's huge. New York, 6 months. They want 20 pieces. He didn't respond right away. He just took the canvas from her hands and tucked it under his arm before reaching for her fingers. I think you should do it, he said. You do. I know what it means to you. I don't want to leave you. Then we'll go together, Rachel blinked. You'd leave all this? I can work from anywhere. I've done the empire thing. Now I want to build something that moves when we do. She stared at him, stunned. You'd really go, with you? Every time, the wind picked up, scattering flakes between them like glitter. She laughed, breathless, and pulled him close, burying her face in his coat. I don't deserve this, she whispered. Yes, you do. And no more talking like you don't. They didn't speak of the move for the rest of the evening. Instead, they made soup from scratch, danced around the kitchen to an old jazz record, and fell asleep on the couch in front of the fireplace, Pickle curled at their feet. Neither mentioned logistics or timelines, only held each other like time was a thing they could pause. 2 weeks later, Rachel hung her final piece in the gallery on West 24th Street. The room was packed, the buzz electric. She wore a forest green dress with sleeves that floated whenever she moved. Elian stood beside her in a navy suit, his hand resting casually at the small of her back. You nervous? He asked. Yes, she said. But not about the art, he leaned in. Then what? People keep asking who you are, he smiled. And what did you say? That you're the man who made me stop running. They stayed in the city through the spring. Elian rented an airy loft with tall windows and a balcony where Rachel painted in the sunlight. He took meetings from a worn leather armchair by the window, and every night they cooked dinner together, always from scratch. One afternoon in May, he dragged her up the fire escape with a picnic basket and a bottle of wine. The city buzzed beneath them, humming with energy and life. "I have something for you," he said, pulling a small velvet box from his jacket pocket. Rachel stared at it. I'm not asking you to marry me," he said, opening it to reveal a simple gold ring with a tiny diamond set sideways. "I'm telling you I already have," she laughed, tears slipping down her cheeks. "That's not how it works. It is for us. This doesn't mean hurry or change, it just means I know, and I'm not going anywhere." Rachel took the ring without hesitation and slid it onto her finger. "I know too," she said. They didn't rush to plan a wedding or a return to the coast. They lived slowly, deliberately, without apology. They traveled when they wanted, stayed in when they didn't. Rachel's work bloomed. Elian's company evolved into something quieter, more meaningful. They built their life like they built their home carefully, honestly, with both hands. Years later, on a crisp September morning, they stood in a tiny coastal chapel with sea glass windows and said their vows in front of 30 people, most of them barefoot. Rachel wore a dress she'd sewn herself. Elian wore no tie. When the ceremony ended, they walked across the sand hand in hand, shoes forgotten, and watched the tide roll in. "You think your younger self would believe any of this?" she asked. "Not for a second," he said. "But he'd be jealous," she laughed, tilting her face to the sun. "We built something good, didn't we?" He squeezed her hand. "We built something perfect." And as the waves whispered against the shore, they stood wrapped in salt air and sunlight, knowing without question that they were exactly where they were meant to be, together, always.